After everything, the losses, the delusion, the downfall, Drake might have finally admitted defeat, but not in the way you think. Now, as we're about to look at what might be Drake's saddest admission of defeat yet, it's clear that with everything going on right now, the Cupcake is finally starting to realize just how bad things look. Before we go any further, especially since the Drake stans are furious and getting more annoyed by the day as the situation turns from a small issue into something much bigger, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. It really helps me out, and it ensures that no matter what, the Icemen can't stop the truth from being heard. Now, with that said, sit back, relax, and if you haven't already, drop a like. After becoming the laughingstock of the cultural landscape, and of course, earning that title by being a shameless bandwagon fan who tried to act like the Blue Jays mascot and is now taking the ultimate L for it, things are only getting worse for him. It's starting to look like Drake, the self-proclaimed crybaby Karen Cupcake, might finally be admitting that this whole grift he's been running just isn't working out anymore. We've seen that more clearly than ever through his response to all the World Series jokes and the celebration that's taken over online, with everyone saying they're running it back, not like us, while trolling him once again. On that note, when the Dodgers players joined in to mock Drake after all his earlier trolling, he ended up looking like an even bigger joke, on a stage far larger than rap itself. And now, the bot-loving, Karen-driven Ice Spice man seems to be reluctantly accepting defeat. For Drake, this moment feels different from the past humiliations, from the back and forth with Kendrick Lamar, to the lawsuits, to the recent public embarrassments like the Super Bowl loss. What's surprising is that this time, he isn't trying to distract everyone from his mess with a new album or some other clownish stunt that makes us wonder how Jimmy Brooks from Degrassi ever got near the center of hip-hop in the first place. Instead, Drake actually addressed the situation head-on, and in true Drake fashion, he did it through a post. He commented directly on the World Series loss, the Dodgers win, and all the hate he's been getting. His caption read, "Congrats to the Jays for a dream season and a legendary World Series fight. Got so sticky I had to take a break from steak and get some air." What's important here, and fair warning, if you're tired of Drake's antics, this part will probably annoy you, is that he paired the caption with video of himself hanging out inside the Rogers Center. And of course, there he is, sitting in his little seat, because that's all he'll ever be, a fan in the stands. He'll never actually take that stage. What Drake ended up doing was creating yet another promo video for Steak, using it as an opportunity to push their uninspired gambling services on his impressionable fan base. Though that's a whole separate conversation we won't even get into right now. In the video, Drake switches from playing the usual games on Steak to opening a panel that supposedly gives him control of the Rogers Center Dome. He presses a button and suddenly, the dome begins to open. Now, let's be absolutely clear, the video is fake. Completely fake. For obvious reasons. Drake doesn't have the power to control the roof of a major sports stadium, especially during one of the biggest baseball events in the world. But it seems many of his fans didn't catch that. Some were actually hyping it up in the comments, acting like it proved how much influence he has in his city. Beyond the Drake stand's clear lack of understanding of physics, logistics, or just plain reality. Because really, how could anyone believe that pressing a button on Drake's phone could open an entire dome? What's important here is the symbolism Drake is trying to sell. Aside from flashing his little music button and pretending to multitask between Steak and his playlist, Drake wanted this moment to look like he had control, as if he could open up the roof of a stadium at will. The big red button he pressed is the key image here, and honestly, it's almost impressive how he manages to keep this illusion going, this false narrative that he holds some kind of power or deeper meaning behind these stunts. He keeps feeding his fans tiny Easter eggs, hinting that something major is coming, that he's about to do something shocking, when in reality, there's nothing there. But if we take a step back, it's clear that his so-called acknowledgement of the Blue Jays' loss was really just another Steak-mandated promo. This is, after all, one of the only brands left that still openly associates with Drake. Nike and even his own label have distanced themselves, embarrassing him more than ever during this rough patch. The fact that Steak is the most reputable name still tied to Drake speaks volumes. At this point, Drake has boxed himself into a corner where, no matter what contract or obligations he's locked into, he's stuck backing his buddies, Aiden Ross, Eddie, and the rest of the Steak crew, and continuing to pump out low-quality promotional content like this. Sure, he's profiting from it. His fans use these sketchy gambling services, play these pointless games, and that boosts his value to Steak. But that's the whole point, and the whole problem. It shows exactly why Drake does what he does at this stage in his career. He's become a full-time grifter, willing to sacrifice any shred of integrity or authenticity just to keep his pockets full and his numbers inflated. That's who he is now, and unfortunately, that's what he stands for. Now, when you step back and look at everything, the moment we're in, it's clear that Drake is being clowned by just about everyone. And it's not only because of the whole LA versus Toronto dynamic I talked about in the last video. There was always going to be a parallel to the biggest rap beef of our time, Kendrick Lamar versus Drake, because the setup was just too perfect to ignore. But now, after Drake spent time heckling the Dodgers, confidently declaring that the Blue Jays would win, and even arrogantly predicting they'd finish the series sooner than they ever came close to, things are completely backfired. He was taunting some of the best athletes in the world, putting himself right under the magnifying glass. And now, those same words are being used as punchlines. To his credit, Drake seems to understand that he's being mocked. And in his own lame, half-hearted way, he's actually addressing the L more directly than he usually does. What stands out here, though, is that if Drake had simply admitted that the Blue Jays lost, maybe even congratulated LA, there would have been a hint of respect in that gesture. People might have eased up on him a little. They might have said, okay, maybe this guy has at least a shred of humility or respect for the game. But of course, this is the Ice Spice man we're talking about. What did we really expect? Instead of taking accountability, Drake doubled down with a bizarre red button gimmick. Something that feels almost too absurd to believe in 2025, let alone 2026. To call it baffling would be an understatement. Drake is acting like he's lost, flirting with the idea of embracing defeat, only to spin it into another self-serving stunt, instead of moving on to something better. And when you think about the whole red button skit and the fake Rogers Center Dome sequence, it almost feels like a jab. Not just at the World Series narrative, but at Kendrick Lamar himself. It's as if Drake is saying, sure, Kendrick had his little moment performing in the Rogers Center, but I still have the keys to the building. So now, we're watching Drake edit fake footage of himself sitting in the Rogers Center as a fan, pressing a red button, trying to send some strange coded message to Kendrick Lamar, as if that somehow brings his rivalry full circle. At this point, you have to ask, when is enough enough? When will Drake finally stop calling himself a rapper or tagging his releases as hip-hop, when this is how he's choosing to antagonize his biggest rival? It's delusional. The man can't even acknowledge his baseball team's loss, something objective, decided by an actual score and a trophy, and yet he still refuses to accept defeat. It's hard to even put into words how absurd this is. And if you don't think Drake was trying to send a message to Kendrick here, or at least troll him in some indirect, ego-driven way, keep in mind, we've heard that Kendrick does, in fact, see these stories. He watches what other rappers are doing. And you can bet he's seeing all of this ridiculous behavior from Drake too. To think that Drake didn't hear the same news we all did, and then intentionally went overboard with this whole stake bit to send subliminal messages to his rivals and the people who clearly have more love in his own city than he does, would be ignoring the pattern we've seen from him for nearly 2 years now. And honestly, seeing how far Drake has gone this time, you almost want to say, all right, Karen, it's time to admit it. You lost, at least in some way. When I heard Drake stands and those strange anti-Kendrick voices trying to spin this, saying things like, people giving Drake an L over this is so corny, we're tired of hearing about it. It really highlighted the delusion. Because let's be real, people only talk about Drake because he keeps doing things that demand attention. He continuously inserts himself into controversy, creating these moments that have been playing out since May 2024. And through all of it, he's refused to take accountability. He's never admitted defeat, never shown growth, never acknowledged reality. Instead, he keeps building this fantasy world, complete with ghostwriters scribbling stories that don't reflect anything real, not from him or from any version of reality that actually exists. Now, that delusion has brought us here, to the image of Drake sitting in the stands as a fan, while trying to act like a king, a winner, or some kind of leader. He's clinging to the illusion that he still has competitive dominance, whether in the city, in rap, or in this long, exhausting back and forth with Kendrick Lamar and anyone else calling him out. When I first saw this clip, I'll admit, for a second, I actually thought Drake might finally be ready to own up to his losses. And that would have been monumental, not just for hip-hop, but for culture as a whole, because that kind of humility, that kind of self-awareness, is something we've never seen from him before. It would have been a turning point, a real moment of growth that said, yeah, I messed up, I took an L, and I'm ready to move forward. But here's the truth, and I think we all know it by now. Nothing Drake does from this point forward is going to fix his legacy. His reputation and career have already been so deeply tainted, tarnished, and dismantled that there's just no path back to what he once was. We're not talking about a simple fall off here. We're talking about a complete identity collapse. A man who once stood for dominance, confidence, and artistry now standing for delusion, desperation, and denial. And the thing is, it's only going to get worse from here. Drake has shown zero accountability. He's built his entire brand around being defiant, defensive, and disconnected from reality. The people around him, they're not helping. They're enablers, a circle of yes men and influencers who share the same mindset. Never admit defeat, never take responsibility, and never stop pretending you're on top, even when the world can clearly see you're not. At this point, Drake isn't just living in delusion. He's turned it into his brand identity. It's his entire persona now. And when you look at what's come out of that, the music, the cringeworthy gambling promos, the fake stunts, the gimmicks, it all reflects the same hollow, self-serving principle. Everything he does feels like a commercial, like an ad for his own denial. Now, when we talk about how artist choices affect their legacies, we've seen plenty of people hit rock bottom and bounce back. That's part of hip-hop's DNA. Redemption stories are what keep the culture alive. Rappers fall off, they go through trials, and then they come back stronger because they face the truth, they confront the moment, and they grow from it. Right now, hip-hop is wide open. There's space for new voices, new contenders, and even for former giants to reclaim their place. With Kendrick sitting firmly on top, undisputed, untouchable, there's still that open lane for someone to grab the number 2 spot. Anyone with the right energy, the right hunger, and the right honesty could take it. But Drake? He's not even in the race anymore. He's defined his brand around the worst possible values: greed, delusion, and self-parody. And he's made it crystal clear that he's never going to change. Every new move he makes, every post, every partnership, every performance, just drives him further away from the respect he once earned. The more we see of him, the less there is to admire. In this most recent moment, where he could have simply admitted defeat or even just nodded to it in a self-aware way, could have been a saving grace. He could have said something like, "You know what, LA took it this time. Respect." That alone might have started to rebuild some credibility. But instead, he doubled down. He let the delusion take the wheel again. He and the team he constantly bandwagoned for lost to LA and by extension, lost to Kendrick Lamar. And instead of taking that on the chin, he hid behind yet another gimmick. Right now, Drake is in absolute shambles. And the sad part is, he doesn't even realize it. He's still playing this chaos Karen crash-out role, a man so obsessed with perception that he's forgotten what authenticity even feels like. It's going to be interesting in a darkly entertaining way to see where he goes from here. But if I had to guess, whatever happens next, it's only going to get worse. Because this was the moment, the one window where Drake could have shown growth, where he could have flipped the narrative, where he could have proven he still had some awareness left. For a moment, it almost looked like he might do it, and that would have been huge. It would have shown that beneath all the posturing, there was still a person in there, one who could face reality, even if just for a second. But no, we didn't get that. Instead, Drake doubled down on the same tired shtick. And by doing that, he cemented himself permanently as one of the biggest self-inflicted losses in hip-hop history. At this point, Drake isn't just taking LS. He is the L. So, on that note, if you've made it this far in the video, you are officially one of the biggest winners of all time. Seriously, thank you for watching, thank you for supporting, and thank you for not falling for the grift. If you haven't already, make sure to hit that like button. It really does help out a ton. And I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Now, if you want to see how, right before this, Drake was accused of having 37 billion fake Spotify streams, and how that revelation might prove that everything around him, from the numbers to the fame, is faker than we ever imagined, then you're not going to want to miss what's next. Check out the suggested video, because things are only getting messier from here.